Hello, beautiful stars. Courtney here with Stars of the Morning Light. This is Edgar Cayce Life Skills Studies, and we are again in chapter 8 of his source material, Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation, published in 1969. Beloveds, hello. This is pre-recorded and released because I am a busy, busy girl right now, having to travel here soon. Please stay tuned for Friday, March 7th's message because it will also tie in with this. Okay, loves. Today's message, because he brings up the author, brings up a lot about his readings of Atlantis, which I kind of wasn't expecting. Not in the reincarnation, but of course it would, because Atlantis is a part of the whole deal, isn't it? I want to put it out there right now that today's message, which is for entertainment and education purposes only, um, for many, it might burst the bubble of curiosity and imagination and all about Atlantis, which I know for a fact we have not covered yet. Edgar's source material on Atlantis, because there was a lot of readings because people were intrigued. When we get through all of the book on reincarnation, we are then going to move into his readings about the millennium, because that's what we're living, right? So I need to bring 100 years forward, right? A lot of these readings were being done in the 1920s, 30s, as we are 100 years later. And that was the whole purpose of Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies. So we, after this, and we still have some time in this book, but this book will take us a while on reincarnation. After we get through this, we're going to do his material on the millennium. And then we are also going to, after that, move into his readings about Atlantis, because Atlantis will explain a lot of the why as to why we're living the way we are. So, unfortunately, I do believe a lot of people have this interesting obsession, interesting imagination about Atlantis. Many people will think that they are from there, which you probably are, but yet they're seeing it in a different scope than what it actually was. Now, have I spoken about Atlantis at times? Yes, I definitely have. And in random videos. There's two things that I want to say, and then we will get into the material. First of all, I am a very big believer of stuff that is buried should probably stay buried. I'll leave that where it is. And also, many of you have heard me say that everything in 3D density living, right? And 3D living is designed for you to choose yourself. I will always say that, but not in the self-serving 3D density that we live in. Density in itself, 3D consciousness in itself, uh, has us in a self-serving. It always will. It's part and parcel to 3D consciousness, self-serving. So when I say everything in 3D consciousness living, third dimensional density, which is where we're going to start in this material, is there and it's designed for you to choose yourself. I mean, as in healing, as in gaining the awareness of your karma, gaining the awareness that you can choose differently, gaining your awareness and we are here to serve others and not ourselves. Really, truly gaining the awareness and the conscious levels beyond even fifth dimensional consciousness living into the seventh, more of the Christ consciousness, right? As many people in this community use that term a lot. That will be covered on March 7th at 11 a.m. What that actually is. So when I say everything in third dimensional density consciousness is designed for us to choose ourselves, it is in the ascension aspect, the expansion aspect, remembering more so that you've already lived through all the heartache and trauma that the density can produce. So we start to choose differently. It is going to speak about the third density consciousness and the self-serving of all the Atlanteans that many still are living through. So let's get into it, folks. Good day, hello, whenever you're catching this. Please leave a comment below, hit that thumbs up, share this out. I do appreciate the fact that most of the subscribers here at Stars of Morning Light, y'all have watched the Edgar Cayce stuff. Beyond anything else that is viewed here, y'all really like the Edgar Cayce, and so I appreciate that. Thank you, because those who are listening know that Edgar and I, we very much are akin in abilities and life experiences, and so there's a very special place in my heart for Edgar. So I appreciate that all of you are interested in knowing about that beautiful man also. So we are still in chapter 8, and the last video on this, we kind of left with um, the influences of astrology and different influences out there and whatnot. Then there was a page break, and I just stopped because we covered enough. This is a lot to cover, what I'm about to get into, and I'm going to actually try to cover it all to finish out this chapter. So it's the last page break in this chapter, and wow, they pack in a lot. The page break says the soul's immunity to death. So there you go. You're immune to death. Ain't that groovy? How does the world of the living appear to the soul who is temporarily free of the earth body? Well, they start it with a question, and they kind of break down what Edgar had always explained. And they're giving it an example as to like an astronaut, okay? As in, the astronaut is a man. It's a human. And when they're here on the Earth, we can feel that gravity, we can feel that density, we can feel all this stuff, right? But then when that astronaut goes out into space, after they're buckled in, and they're still feeling the density and they're feeling the of the traveling into space, well, then if they have to go repair something on the ship, they are tethered, right? They're tethered to the ship. But man, when they get out there, no gravity, they just feel light, weightless, somewhat free if they weren't tethered. Wow. So they're trying to use that as an example that when the soul leaves this body of form and no longer in 3D density, that's how it feels. Oh, light, free, flying around, not attached really, you know, still tethered to this concept of Earth, but not attached as walking around, but yet still the same soul, still the same energy being that will return to a body of form. So I didn't need to read all of the paragraphs that explained that, but I will say that this is how it was respond. How does the world of the living appear to the soul who is temporarily free of the earth body? The simplest frame of reference might be to compare the weight and density of an astronaut on the ground with his weight and density in orbit. So then, like I said, they go through all that. Once you feel you can accept this comparison, it may be easier for you to go back to the creation and imagine the souls as they first became aware of themselves. Hmm. Could you imagine becoming aware of yourself? To remember who you are outside of third dimensional consciousness living density? The earth was still cooling from its fiery birth. The division of land and water had followed. Then came the emergence of animal life from its embodiment origins. Pardon me. The only solid matter of souls had ever known was now manifesting itself on the earth proper. In other words, only the earth itself conformed to the laws of density and gravity as we know of them now. Hovering above the earth, the souls had been following this evolutionary process with fascination, and now, with the division of animal life into male and female species, their curiosity tempted them to digress from their own evolutionary path and assume mortal shape instead. At this time, remember, their bodies were still of spiritual texture. In terms of an astronaut, they were weightless. So let's pull full scope to this. The Earth created, there's other beings, there's all sorts of stuff. The Earth, as far as being created, I said it last week as we were talking about the planetary aspect. It wasn't the moon and the sun and the all these planets and Jupiter and Venus. Earth first. Earth first. And you can get these out of a lot of different scriptures. You can get them out of the Nag Hammadi, you can get them out of um Sumerian somewhat alludes to it. They were focused on other things. But you can get them out of other areas and ancient stories. Earth first. So could you imagine all these like all these energy beings like watching this stuff like, whoa, what's being built over there? We do that to this day, right? We'll be driving in our car and we'll be like, what's being built over there? So, same kind of concept. They're watching this earth come into formation, and then the plants, the animals, all this groovy stuff. Then they're watching the from the cellular level into animal into whoa, now it's male, female. Oh, they're reproducing. Oh, they're doing stuff. And they go, wow, what would that be like? We don't know anything like that. We've never experienced. We were just thought of, which we'll get into. So curiosity, which is awesome. That's awesome to know. I apologize, folks. I might be moving my light around a lot. If you're visually watching this. I hope you're just listening. Um, it's because it's a very cloudy day after storms, and I need light to read. Cayce constantly employs the term thought forms while dealing with their condition at this stage of their development. A thought form is exactly what the name suggests. A form created by concentrated thought, yet lacking the solidity of mundane matter. On all mental levels other than the conscious mind, thoughts are things, and thus a thought form, once it is created, is as real and tangible as the mind which created it. It can only manifest itself to the conscious mind as a vision or a hallucination. So, thought forms, which I will tell you, Lucky Stone and I will be covering this at one point, probably closer to springtime, on Esoteric Tea on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Thought forms, thoughts are things. We hear that saying over and over and over again. Concentrated, though. Please take that in. Concentrated. So it's not that every thought that flows through your consciousness, every thought of things to do, fears, anxieties, or even pleasures. It's not that every thought that flows through you is going to become a thing. It's every concentrated thought. And this is when people really have to understand that. So, worry, fear, doubt, if we continuously think something over and over again, it can happen. It will happen, right? Because thoughts are things, but it has to be concentrated. So, this is when we stop and we ask ourselves, am I in love or am I in fear? Am I concentrating more on love or am I concentrating more on fear? So, not every thought, concentrated thought, thought forms. It can only manifest itself to the conscious mind as a vision or hallucination. So, they're talking about, then they go into the subconscious and the conscious. And they talk about, like, imagine if acid breaks down the protecting barrier and submit the user to direct contact with thought forms, usually his own. So they're talking about the obsession, because obsession can be conscious thought too. I do want to point out this is when Christ consciousness would say stuff as in, um, many people quote this, don't quote this too often, but or they quote it incorrectly. But he would say, "The love of money is what destroys all men." Right? It's not. It's not only for the rich. When Christ would talk about the love of this, the love of that, the love of this, in representation of something outside of fellowship, service, even loving thy enemy, right? If it was a love of some form of material, he was actually referencing the obsession. And this is what I really want to explain to people is that it's not just the rich, quote unquote, who love money. You could be broke as broke can be. And if you are thinking about it all the time, that is the obsession there, the worry, fear, and doubt. is the same equivalent of the Christ consciousness saying love because you are thinking about that more. You're obsessing about it more. So sometimes when we hear quotes, the context is not fully there, as in that term love is actually in representation of obsession or continuous concentrated thought on this particular thing. So even as he would maybe say, love your neighbor as you love yourself, or love your enemy as you love yourself, he is actually trying to say, think about your neighbor as much as you think about yourself. Think about your enemy as much as you think about yourself. They're going through the same thing. Y'all are mirrors of each other. So when we hear things of the love of money corrupts all men, that's what he's saying. You're thinking about it too much. So therefore you are creating thought forms, energetic influences that are going to affect you. When these outside contacts are evil, his encounters with them can have a dangerous after effect on his own sanity. So our thought forms can can affect others. Other people's thought forms can affect us. It's all energy, folks. And so could you imagine if we actually stop loving money and material things, as in, let's not worry about it, let's not use our concentration on it, if we have a lot or if we have none, because it's affecting us and it's affecting others. That goes for all things. When a competent hypnotist tells a subject in a trance that he is holding an orange in his empty hand, the subject obediently begins to eat it. He is, to all intents and purposes, eating a real orange. He has created he has created a thought form of it that at that level of his subconscious where thought is matter. There's conscious, there's subconscious. If we are obsessing about anything, if it's renting a bunch of space in our consciousness, it will move into our subconscious and the two will start playing together. And when it moves into the subconscious is where it becomes matter. So, um, we're worried about paying the bills. And we just keep thinking about, we're projecting into, I'm not going to have enough money to pay the bills next month. I just know I'm not. And I'm thinking about it and thinking about it in my conscious, thinking about it. Well, that's going to move into our subconscious. Our subconscious is where creation happens. This is why we have to tap into our subconscious to remember who we are and that we are creators. It'll move into our subconscious. And the more there's that interplay between conscious and subconscious about the same damn fear, well, then the subconscious creates it. It becomes the matter. And becomes matter. And the only reason, folks, that we're not creating from our consciousness is because the density that we live in. The subconscious can break the barrier, and that's what they start going into, how if you put acid on something, it'll break the barrier away. It's the exact same thing. The subconscious is the only that can break down the barrier of the 3D and create. But it's a communication between your conscious and your subconscious. They are still of the same body of form. They are still connected. So, right? Change your mind, change your life. Am I in love or am I in fear? What are we concentrating on? Cayce explained that the uncorrupt soul could enter and withdraw from from its matter at will, being able to push out itself and adopt to the conditions which had already taken shape in its thought, much in the way that much in a way and manner that the present day amoeba sustains itself in the waters of a stagnant bay or lake. So the more we think about it, the more we become it. Because they had never, and also, guys, he's also referencing other people's thought forms. So other people's fears and insecurities can come in and start to infiltrate our consciousness. And then if it's in our consciousness too much, then it moves to the subconscious, and there we go. That's our living life. We're like everybody else. So imagine if we flip that into love. If our thoughts can influence other people like that, well, imagine if we just concentrate on love. Because it had never been God's intent that the souls should ever manifest themselves on this earth in human bodies, there was yet no division of the soul into the male and female, hence the masculine feminine energy within. Now every human carries both. Therefore, the animal's means of reproduction was incessible to them. Their only alternative was to occupy the animal bodies, much as a hermit crab might occupy the empty shell of another species, except that in this case, the shells were already occupied. So, all these beautiful, weightless energy beings, souls, were like, man, I want to go down there and hang out because what is going on? Look at all this evolution, all these changes. What a fascinating time. But the original creation of that soul is a thought form from the original OG creator source, had the masculine and feminine energy within. They were not to reproduce themselves. They were just to be everlasting. Well, upon coming here, well, they had to occupy a animal, right? Let's just hold on to that term. Animal body. Come on in, take take house, take in, right? And within that animal body is the masculine and feminine physical forms that can be used for reproduction. Much as a hermit crab might occupy the empty shell of another species, except that in this case, the shells were already occupied. Those animal bodies had something within them already from source. Who do you think started taking over? Thus, two entirely alien forms of life were attempting to share a common physical heritage. The hazards were obvious. Nevertheless, a few of the bolder souls employed their free will to intrude into this denser vibration of animal matter. The wiser and more prudent souls hesitated, and it was well that they did. So not everybody came, right? Not all these energy soul beings that could have been in their own right have their own characteristics. I call them celestial beings of love and light. Or were they? I wonder if the ones that came first were like, ooh, let's go see what that's all about. And then others hesitated. Those souls which now found themselves entrapped in their flesh prisons were unable to extract themselves. Whoa. Hmm. The alien matter of the material world acted like cogs in a machine. You could not, once you came and you got in that animal body, you're staying. It engorged the souls and swept them along with it. They became hopelessly entangled in the proactive process. And onto the earth came an, an anguished hybrid, neither human nor animal, a half man, half beast, unable to conform to or escape from the laws of animal evolution. So animals here, Source had already given them some kind of energy within them, some kind of consciousness. Of course, there was some kind of consciousness because it, evolution has evolution needs consciousness in order to happen, right? So these animal beings are evolving, evolving. All of a sudden now they're reproducing, they're doing all these creative and magical wonders from an outside source looking down, alien being, as in alien, as in energy being, as in not foreign to this earth, looking down, watching all this, and these soul beings go, whoa, fascinating. So some of these soul beings went, I want to go experience that. I want to experience this evolution process of recreating and birthing and all this crazy stuff. Look at it. I want to do that. And they were so bold to then willingly, it said their free will. So that means human free will is attached to all this, right? Willingly came down, pushed themselves into a animal body of form, which unfortunately, because of the density here, remember this opened up with weight and density of 3D. Density, you are not lightweight anymore. Now you're trapped. Now you're trapped. Does not have to be so, though. We cover a lot of how to not be trapped into the 3D density here at Stars of the Morning Light. So now they're in this like half human, half be animal beast based on because it was an animal consciousness, survival. I'm going to reproduce, I'm going to eat, and I will kill, right? That's it. It was survival, animal. We find these sons of the creative forces, says Cayce, looking upon those changed forms, the daughters of men, and their con and their and they're crept in those. Sorry, pardon me, folks. Let me look at how this is. They populated themselves with those mixtures. This brought contempt, hatred, bloodshed, and those impulses which built for self-desire without respect of others' freedoms. The souls who had remained free were unable to come to the rescue. They could only look on, helpless and bewildered. So all those souls that said, no, 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 we're going to see what happens first. No, 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 you can go on down. We're going to see what happens. Well, now they're watching this. They're witnessing, oh my goodness. The soul that was just next to me is now down there trapped in a mixture of what is animal and human and survival, bloodlust, corruption. I mean, this brought contempt, hatred, bloodshed, and those impulses which which build for self-desire without respect for another's freedom. Could you imagine watching this? Some of us chose to come because of that. We just went, holy goodness, we can't lose it all. The souls who remained free were unable to come to the rescue. They could only look on, helpless and bewildered. It was this that caused God to create a perfect physical mold, or flesh body, into which the rescue souls, and that's quote, rescue souls could incarnate with safety. Symbolized in Genesis as the creation of Adam, man appeared in his present form at 5 different phases on Earth, and each of the 5 newly created groups was authentically distinct from the others. So maybe you were one that hesitated and said, well, I guess we'll see what happens. Then you're an onlooker watching these souls that probably started out as decent souls. I mean, this is very new. Turn into like this half human, half beast, carnal, bloodshed. We have these stories as well, people, right? Insane cannibalism, insane debauchery, insane. I mean, we have these stories. So God went, and we have the stories of all the beasts. I mean, beasts that roam this earth, not just, dinosaurs. We have some stories out there, folks, of like, what is that? So, source, main creator, architect, that sort of term, went, oh my goodness. Probably because all the other souls that held back went, knock, knock. Have you seen this? Excuse me. Have you seen what's happening? That earth was beautiful. That earth was magical and wonderful, and it was doing its thing, and we were watching it, and it was great, and everybody was excited. Well, now, do you see what's happening? Can we go help? Can we help? Well, then, a body of form that can hold a soul, a consciousness, subconscious, all that great stuff, had to be created to work with this concept of you do know that once you go, you are going to be stuck there. You do know that once you go, you're going to be stuck there. So, all of you that have come, if that was your original intent, rescue souls, in quotations, if that was your original intent, it is still your intent. It is still your intent. And you knew, this is some stuff that people might not be aware of. You knew when you chose to come that that's what you were going to be choosing. That you were going to just keep recycling and recycling and recycling, having no awareness. You're going to forget every time. You're going to forget every time. But you witnessed and saw how horrible things were getting in many ways. And it could have been at different time periods. You could have seen the first cycle being destroyed of the earth. You could have witnessed the third or fourth cycle, right? Of the earth being destroyed. Because there's been at least 4. And you could have seen that, witnessed that, and went, no, no, no. This has to stop. And so I'm going to take on in my willingness to go there to help. And once you got here, oh man, all the natural laws, karmic, um, metaphysics, hermetics, nature in this body of form. That's what really took over. But if you believe that you are originally, you chose to come to help and rescue, that is still, that is still your objective. Your objective is not to hopefully get this right so I never have to come back. So you're going to keep choosing. You're going to keep coming back. Because when you leave and you're lightweight again and you look back down and you look at the earth, you go, damn, I gotta go again. Damn, I gotta go again. If that was your first mission, your first purpose as to why you're here, it don't ever leave. And so I will tell you folks, with maybe taking that in, once you acknowledge that, I'm speaking for myself, once you acknowledge that that was your reason for coming, was to help rescue because you love this earth and you do not want to see what has always been over and over again. And like I said, it doesn't matter how long ago it was. If that was your reason and that's resonating with you, once you acknowledge that, and I'm speaking for myself, and you really take that in, then ask yourself, would I do it again? And really get honest. Would I do it again? Because if that was your original purpose, I can almost guarantee you, when you really get in touch with your heart, you do it again. And then with that realization, you can go, oh, well then shoot. There is no time clock. There is no dogma. There is no karmic rules. I can just enjoy this plane of existence and live authentically and live heart-centered and live this way because why? I'm going to come back anyways. I'm going to come back anyway, so I might as well enjoy this place. And then when you start enjoying this place, it becomes lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, where you don't feel the entrapment, especially when we take responsibility and acknowledgement that we're choosing it. We're choosing it, so let's enjoy it. Let's be of love and light and peace, because I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. Whoo, because this place can be awesome. Lighter and lighter and lighter, being responsible with our choices. Symbolized in the Genesis as the creation of Adam, man appeared in this present form at 5 different places on Earth, and each of the 5 newly created groups was authentically distinct from the others. Lucky Stone 888 and I will be covering Adam at one point. He put that in an email to me, and I said, Lucky, that's a big old topic, so we need some time to cover, because I said, which Adam? Which Adam are we covering? Oh, that will happen at Esoteric Tea on 8 o'clock on Saturday nights, Eastern Standard Time, at some point in time. So subscribe to Lucky Stone 888. The link is below and here, so you can catch when that happens, because that one's going to be probably multiple parts for all the multiple atoms. The souls who were incarnated through these pure channels are referred to by Cayce as the sons of God, to distinguish them from the souls trapped in animal matter. These he called the sons of man. Hmm, that puts a little bit of a spin on it, doesn't it? Sons of God were the souls that God created a human form for them to come rescue people and rescue this place and the earth when the souls that were trapped because they wanted to come down and experience and got trapped in animal matter were referred to as the sons of man. The Bibles, when the Bible would say keep the race pure, which is in the Old Testament, have their origins in the first appearance of uncontaminated souls on the earth. To them, the hybrid souls with their animal deformities were, in the Hindu sense, untouchable. So, in biblical terms and also Hindu traditions, there's a whole beloveds, all of the stories. Think of all the stories. And I'm not going to even put this in relation to like the Anunnaki, but think of all the stories. Think of all the stories you can think of. Depending, it doesn't matter on what race, color, creed, religion, thoughts, theories, all the stories. The sons of God, in their five separate race categories of white, black, brown, red, and yellow pigmentation, built up their separate civilizations on continents now destroyed or altered beyond recognition by the subsequent earth changes. This is when he's going to get into Atlantean stuff. The Atlantic Ocean now covers the submerged continent of Atlantis that was run by the red race. Just as the Pacific covers the sunken continent of Lemuria, cradled by the black race. Because so few questions were put to Edgar Cayce concerning it, the readings record very little on Lemuria because people wanted to know more about Atlantis, that's all. But Atlantis, 200,000 BC to 10,700 BC, is generously documented. Indeed, according to the readings, it is far to assume that it was cradled of our present civilization. When they're saying cradled, as in those who occupied it took care of it, right? So the sons of God, the sons of God, okay, remember, those were the souls who now incarnated through these pure channels are referred to by Cayce as the sons of God. The story is going to flip here in a minute. That's why I have to really make mention of this. So they originally were the souls who wanted to come to rescue. And there were different races created for different areas. Okay, cool. That's wonderful. We're still going to this day, right? Lemuria were more of the black race, or African race, I should say, right? The Atlantis was the red race, which, and please, beloveds, do you know this was written in 1969? So even in the context of a reading from the Akashic records, it would probably reference red, black, white, and brown. They would. They would reference that like we do in common speech today. Okay? So the red race is actually more your Hindus and whatnot. So please take that in, right? Your Mediterraneans, that sort of thing. Please take that in as in it's not in representation to like natives of today in America. So we have those two that are being covered, at least in this material. Indeed, according to the readings, it is fair to assume that it was cradled of our present civilization. This vast soul group was both the most aggressive and the most resourceful the world has ever known. So this is where we also get the stories of like there's Atlantis here, then in South America there was stuff going on, and we're seeing the same kind of unearthings of statues and technologies possibly, and all this stuff that we refer to as ancient aliens all across the globe because things were set in different areas. Not saying there wasn't interplay between all of them. This is why we're a multicultural, beautiful world. But we're talking about the soul group of Atlantis. For the most part, the Atlanteans' influence is still as headstrong as ever it was. This influence applies particularly to those soul groups who choose not to reincarnate at a steady rate of progress. At their zeal, at their zenith, the Atlanteans commanded the powers of ESP and telepathy, harnessed electricity, mastered mechanical propulsion of air and sea vessels, established shortwave communications, induced longevity, and performed advanced surgery using their source of energy that which is referred to as the terrible crystal. Their own forerunner of the laser ray. It was the misuse of the same source of energy which destroyed them. Let's go back and say that they were the most aggressive and the most resourceful. They were restless expressions of human life, perpetually striving to meddle with, alter, and improve the laws of nature. They attained to a fantastic height of power and then proceeded to abuse it. From their spiritual beginnings as a civilization that only recognized the one God, they eventually rejected him from the for the totalitarianism God of brute force, which is the same as saying they worship their own vice instead. They reduced the backward hybrid souls or mutants to slavery, subjecting them to every denigration and abuse. So Atlantis, who started out as a particular soul group, and I want to make note right now, folks, because I do know, and so you can, take in whatever you choose to take in. If this resonates with you, please leave a comment below. I do have to stress, Atlantis was the biggest and most powerful. But you do also have Lemuria. You also have ones in South America. You have ones everywhere. I will cover this at some point. Do not think that they did not also do the same horrible things to what they saw as lower beings, these hybrid, lesser conscious density beings, part human, part animal, what we kind of know of the human race. This is where we get in the Lemurian texts, or the Sumerian texts. Sorry about that. To, well, we just created more humans to dig for gold. It was not just Atlantis. Atlantis was just the most powerful of all of them. Atlantis was the most corrupt and big. Did it start that way? Goodness, no. It started with knock knock source. Something horrible's going on down at Earth. We would like to go and help them. Oh, really? You want to help? Okay. I'll create these bodies of form for you. Real easy peasy because I'm source. I'm going to create different ones across the globe, and I'm actually going to have to do my first 3 attempts, right? We got to get it good for you guys so this can happen. Oh, great. Look, you made all these places for us to live. This is wonderful. We can reproduce, we can reincarnate, we can really help. Let's go. And they get here. And they might live a life or two, live for long lives, right? Because back then, these physical bodies of form could be living for hundreds of years. And they do it again. And they do it again because 3D density, now you're kind of locked here. You're locked. But you choose it again anyways. Well, over time, corruption, corruption. We are more important than those other ones. Those ones that we originally came to save. Corruption, corruption, technology, all sorts of sources, all sorts of other outside influences came, right? This is when we do think about things like the Anunnaki. There were other influences. Atlantis grew to be the biggest of them all. Not saying there were not others, but all of them ended up corrupted. All of them started doing weird blood sacrifices. All of them started using technology in vastly horrible ways. All of them were using their gifts of telepathy and ESP and whatnot in horrible ways. So they got what they deserve, right? That's why we leave some things that are buried, we leave them buried. So even if it started rightly to be a rescue soul, the reason I'm going into this more so than not is because you know how many conversations I've had in my life with people thinking they're from Atlantis, which they probably are. Atlantis or Lemuria or what have you. Okay. Yeah, you probably are, which means you got a lot of ground to cover to get to a Christ consciousness, to work out of the dogmas, the karma, the hermetics of 3D consciousness density living into at least seventh dimensional living to obtain the Christ consciousness to be lightweight while also here. So they rejected the one God. They reduced the backward hybrid souls or mutants to slavery, subjecting them to every degradation and abuse. They remained perfectly aware of the laws of karma, but made the error in assuming that their accumulating debts could easily be paid off at any given time in the future. Here they reckoned without one factor, that the path of evolution might suddenly veer in its course and return them to meet their debts in shorn, bodies shorn of their Atlantean presence and might. It is exactly what befell them. When man's senses were reduced to the minimal five he possesses today, the Atlantean miscreant found himself as impotent as the hermit crab befelt of its own shell. So eventually, time and evolution caught up to him. They were here in 3D density too long. So all of their gifts, talents, skills, what made them be able to have the power over others out of misuse and long time here, evolution, they lost their powers. They have now all the same five senses as anyone else. And they're losing their memory, right? They're, imagine if you if we all reincarnated right now into a fully tacked Atlantis and all the technology is there, the terrible crystal is there, all of this stuff is there, right? And we're capable, or we're not exactly capable of doing our telepathy, but we're understanding that it's a thing. And so we're learning that stuff. Well, imagine if we all just were born into that. Well, then you adopt and adapt to what you're born into. So it would still kind of be there. But then little by little, little by little, little by little, to eventually, no, we're just going to take Atlantis out of the picture, right? But yet those rescue souls who came originally and then got more corrupt than those they came to rescue. The karmic debts that were to be so easily paid off in a life or two were suddenly magnified into infinity instead of 2 lives. Some of their offenses against God now demanded thousands of lives of restitution. Rather than shoulder such ethereal burdens, they chose spiritual bankruptcy. The vast accumulation of debt remains, however, and still has to be paid. Early in this century, last century, Edgar Cayce began to prophesize the return of both Atlanteans, or sorry, prophesize the return of both types of Atlanteans in the vast numbers. He warned that for every advance of science and material manipulation, the sons of the one God might bring with them, the sons of man could also bring corruption and chaos. This is when we're gonna, much further down, we will be going through Edgar's readings on Atlantis. So he prophesized 100 years ago, around the millennium. Hey, I was born there, around the millennium. So are all of you. You're gonna get two sides of the Atlantean world that are being reborn, right? Because we live in density and the hermetics of this earth, which hermetics does not have to exist beyond into seventh dimensional consciousness. It's not a thing. But in 3D and 5D, hermetics still applies. So you have the duality, right? You have the duality. This will be covered more Friday, March 7th. You have the duality. So you got the souls that even if they did pretty bad, well, they've been doing their restitution for thousands of lives. And so now they're remembering, no, 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 I came to help. I do know of the technology. I do know of this, and I do know love. I am here for the one God. And then you have the other flip side of that. In the duality of hermetics and 3D density, you have the ones that are still very selfish, out for themselves, who also have the same equivalent of understanding. Doesn't that make sense in the 21st century? Atlantean souls are extremist. They know no middle ground, Cayce stated uncompromisingly, adding that Atlanteans of every genre were to be found among the leaders of all the nations involved in the two world wars. So, as a rough standard of comparison, we can set Roosevelt and Churchill at one end of the scale and Hitler and Stalin at the other. Please take that in. They're extremists. They were extreme then, they're extreme now. The advances which civilization has made from barbarism to, to practical democracy leave the impertinent type of Atlantean unmoved, except when his Stupefaction, wow, that his world is not as it was, reaches a catastrophic level. Then he stuffs himself with LSD or climbs into a college bell tower and shoots the students. So do remember that this book was written in 1969. So we do know what they're referencing here, and we've seen more of it. What they are trying to say is because they are extremists. So do you think you come from Atlantean life? Should we lay down the extreme to actually serve? So they're saying that on both sides, and but because of the forgetfulness, you got a bunch of the hippies that are going to start popping LSD, and that is still, for me, the equivalent of people doing all the mushrooms that they're doing to gain awakening is the same equivalent as all the hippies doing LSD back when. Personally, we don't need it. You can achieve it. It can be used for you to become aware of the fact that you're capable of achieving, but it does not need to continuously be used because we then lose the point of why. To the point of that, the awakening through substances, opposed to also the knowing that something doesn't feel right, that this world is not as it should be, and then we have mass casualties as we do. Polarities. At a cer at a level of self-preservation, he is the scoffle whose cynicism undermines his society. You will find him behind the corrupt politician, the ramble rouser, the lunatic fringe dedicated to religion and radical discrimination. Do you remember, everyone? This was written in 1969, but we still understand what's going on here. And the gorgers of sick, fat buck who are reducing the popular cultures to semi-illiterate trash. Extremist. As we have indicated, the Atlanteans were those who had reached an advancement and had been entrusted with divine activities in the earth, but that, forget the one God in whom all live and have their being. Thus they have brought about that which destroyed the body, though not the soul. There are numbers, great numbers, of Atlanteans in the earth in the present. Against the extremist Atlanteans who still worship lust, violence, and death are aligned the sober forces of their tempered, experienced fellow souls who have gained a sane perspective from their many and various reincarnations down through history. Those strong, enabling forces tempered by love and strength. With these marches the Christ. With these may lie our descendants only means of averting another cataclysm akin to the annihilation of Atlantis. As I just said, none of us who may think we're from Atlantis or Lemuria or any of the civilizations, all of them got extremely corrupt. So none of us are without the restitution of all the lives. And like I said, some of us have been here so long, we have seen the endings of cycles so many times, as in catastrophic events that took Atlantis down to the depths of the ocean. Catastrophic events. There's been enough of us that went, whoa. And we messed up. We messed up for a long time. But we've also been here so long that we worked it out. We worked it out. We worked it out. And now we're remembering why I came, why we came. Oh my goodness. It's not about me. It's about everybody else. It's not about me. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm a celestial being of love and light. It's about helping everybody else. It's about loving thy neighbor as thyself, thinking about others more than thyself. It's about raising our vibrations and our consciousness and subconsciousness out of 3D density into 5, into 7, so we can truly feed 5,000 people with 2 fish. This concept is thrown into sharp focus when the life reading for a very young child warns its parents that in its Atlantean life it had worshipped the one God. So then there's actually, I'm going to kind of just generalize these readings. There was one reading for a child that Cayce did that Atlantean stayed true to the one God, as corruption is all over the place. Very rare, by the way. Still, though, got caught up in the karmic cycle because our lives affect each other. Our energetic thought forms affect each other. But in that reading, Edgar said, hey, for this kid, because he stayed true then, and he was supreme with the technology there, help him be a part of technology now. And that was 100 years ago. Get him into communications via sound waves, all sorts of things. Hadn't happened yet, but have him invent the TV, right? Because he's going to be true and sincere in his reason why. But then there was another reading. Another young child being born who was the other end of this, right? Roosevelt, Churchill versus Hitler, Stalin. Because we live in a duality world. So then Cayce does a reading for another young man, a boy being born, that it's the opposite end. Oh my goodness, you're an Atlantean who was bloodthirsty and horrible. Okay, so this is what you do with this kid. He's going to go through a lot of stuff. Please keep him away from this, keep him away from that. This is how you can help him heal, as he was a tyrant. So he really needs to learn to love others. Yeah, Cayce always was having to do these readings that, wow, because we live in duality. So how are you guys doing with this? Leave a comment below. Let me know. Because, like I said, this was going to shatter a lot of people's bubbles. A lot of people have all these beautiful imaginations about Atlantis and, oh, it was this and the technology, like as if that's the only thing to focus on. They were a bloodlust and corruption and depravity. I mean, it was horrible. And it didn't actually take all that long to become horrible because of the density here on Earth. So did this like kind of pop your bubble of, oh, and I was an Atlantean and I was this and I was that. Yeah, you probably were. But I can almost guarantee, including myself, you were probably not of the righteous. You're probably not of the ones that knew of the one God, but said, I am God. So, how much have you had to let go of? And are you still an extremist? Because that energy is very hard to lay down, right? And just be the presence of love, to be the healing powers of Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Christ, the healing powers of Buddha, all of the beautiful healing powers of silence and presence. Or are we still extremist? Why has this oh geez, I can't even say, uh, tyrant, totalitarian, I can't even say the word, guys. I got all in my mind there for a minute, thinking about many people out there. So, why has this, let's say, corruption cross-section of a once mighty race learned nothing from its blunders? Because it refused to keep abreast of the world's spiritual progress by reincarnating in its proper soul cycles. Remember, it did say that they hold off on recycling themselves, reincarnating themselves. They just don't wanna, right, brats? But surely its greatest lack is its ignorance of Christ. Its last memory of life on earth predates, predates by nearly 200 centuries the redemption brought to the soul of man by the Master. It is hardly likely, then, that our articles of faith are imposing enough to command the comprehension or respect of the such advocates. Remembering nothing of Christ, they have no cause to abandon their ancient belief in the brute survival of the fittest. They would be as eager today to enslave the more backward nations as they enslaved the backward humanoids of their own time. Those self-same things or monstrosities whom the sons of the one God led out of Atlantean bondage into prehistoric Egypt were the surgeon priests in the temples of healing eradicated the physical evidence of their animal ancestries and made them man. That alludes, and this is why we're going to have to cover Atlantis. That is talking about, whoa, Atlantis just went under. Folks moved over and built this thing of Egypt, which a lot of that creation was already in place from. I'm going to pause here for a moment. There have been multiple Atlantises, as there have been multiple catastrophic cycle endings of this world. Rescuers, rescue souls. We are here to stop that. So, I'm basing this off of the last one that most people reference, which was the Great Flood. The one before that, this place was blown into smithereens. So I'm referencing the Great Flood. That at time when that happened, whoa, we're going to travel over to this place, Egypt, once this is all kind of covered up. A lot of those pyramids, structures, what have you, they were already here from the last cycle ending. They were already here. So we just rebuilt society there. Okay, cool. In that time, though, the Egyptian priests that understood still of the science magic took all these hybrids and took all these animal human beings, like the Sumerian text, we just made people and started creating, took out elements and added elements, DNA wise, to create the bodies of forms that we know now. That's what they're alluding to. We will definitely cover this when we are in the Atlantean series. This is the purpose of the entity in the earth, Cayce taught. To be a living example of that which he gave. Come unto me, all that are weak and heavy laden. Take my cross upon you and learn of me. These are thy purposes in the earth, and these thou wilt manifest beautifully, or again bring to the miserable failure, as thou didst in Atlantis, and as many other soul is doing in this particular error. That's our only purpose. Rescue, rescue. So much of how to do this is covered at Patreon of Stars of the Morning Light and also here on YouTube. He was referencing the Christ consciousness that is theorized to have traveled through all the masters. Christ consciousness. Do as I do. Obtain higher conscious level here in this body of form because it is attainable to do as I do. Remember that you are a celestial being, a soul of love and light that came in the first place. To hopefully that we don't have to relive a crazy cosmic, horrible disaster. I'm looking on where we had just read that. I'll keep going. And we are in the last little bit here. And once again, this might blow your minds. Because everybody's got a lot of theories about this as well. The final Armageddon, said Cayce, will not be fought on the earth. It will be fought between the souls leaving the earth and the souls endeavoring to return to it, and the souls returning to the God they once deserted, and the lost souls who hope to reject him into eternity. By holding fast at all costs to this failing planet. In terms of Orthodox dogma, it will be a war fought between the dead, not between the living. But Edgar Cayce makes no more difference. He does not differentiate between the dead and the living than he does between the caterpillar, the cocoon, and the butterfly. Thus, the souls involved in the final Armageddon will be the same souls they always were from the beginning. Nothing will have changed except the plane of consciousness they occupy. They will only have moved from the confines of matter to the ethereal plane of their origin. Whoa! I love y'all. Did that just contradict everything you've ever heard? Everything you know? This is why in the Old Testament and New, it would talk about the war in the air, the fight in the skies. It is not necessarily aliens and Anunnaki alien wars. It is the souls, right? The souls. I'm going to read all of that again. I'm going to read all of it again. Take it in, please. The final Armageddon, said Cayce, will not be fought on the earth. Now, hear me out. Armageddon, which is a fight, right? And money, Armageddon also means awareness, coming into the light, understanding things in a conscious way. The final Armageddon, said Cayce, will not be fought on the earth. It will be fought between the souls leaving the earth and the souls endeavoring to return to it. The souls returning to the God they once deserted, and the souls who hope to reject him into eternity by holding fast at all costs to this failing planet. In terms of orthodox dogma, it will be a war fought between the dead, not between the living. But Edgar Cayce makes no more differentiation between between the dead and the living than he does between the caterpillar, cocoon, and butterfly. Thus, the souls involved in the final Armageddon will be the same souls they always were from the beginning. Nothing will have changed except the plane of consciousness they occupy. They will only have moved from the confines of matter to the ethereal plane of their origin. So, Armageddon does not just mean the fight, which is what most people reference it as. It is also the enlightenment. A cataclysmic event, a cycle ending, is not the same as an Armageddon. Okay? It is not the same. Cycles end. And it is a part of the Armageddon process, quote unquote, as to how a cycle will end and a new begin, ending and beginning, ice and fire, right? We love these things, endings and beginnings. It's how it works. It's natural here on the earth. Usually, though, a big, huge, catastrophic event based on the Armageddon aspect of what happens above, as in, what am I choosing? What am I choosing? Am I remembering? Do I have the enlightenment and the awareness that I came here to rescue? Or am I so engrossed and entrapped in this 3D consciousness living that it is all about me? That it is all about me. And self-serving is played out in all sorts of various forms. From those who appear to be righteous and giving and sincere, to those who are extreme in their self-serving, and it's very noticeable. Are we thinking about our neighbor as much as ourself? Are we thinking about are we loving our enemy? Are we loving money? Are we loving material? What is so thought about and concentrated in our consciousness that starts communicating it to our subconscious, which creates the thought forms that then start bouncing around everybody and then once again can infiltrate others, and now they're hostage to other people's thought forms. Are we in fear or are we in love? Are we in fear or are we in love? Are you occupying the space of an Atlantean who has not released its corruption and laid down its extremist? Even if it's masked in peace, love, and integrity? Have we not laid it all down to just be present in the full conscious awareness of it is and full acceptance of it is, to then actually be the light and presence of healing and love? Have we actually gone through the stages of caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, reincarnation, 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 to be redeemed of all that we did through all of the lives, to have the opportunity to heighten our conscious awareness, to help and rescue, as in our original purpose and reason for coming, or when we die and we're making all of our beautiful plans, are we still in the mindscape of no, 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 this earth, it's crummy down there, it's 3D density. I say just take it for all it's worth, because that's what 3D density says. It says take, 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 take. Me, me. It's the taking energy. Take, take, take. It's fought with the dead. It's fought as the dead will rise. It's fought in the air. It's fought based on conscious levels. And for those of us who actually can enter the ethereal and maybe clean people's timelines, right? As I do, to actually serve. So we don't have to live within the repeating cycle energy. Conscious level, different planes of awareness, that once you have that full scope of awareness, you can be the light, you can be the way in this body of form on earth, right? The truth, the light, the way. Isn't that just the most amazing? He didn't, he, the Christos, the Christ consciousness, he didn't mix words. It was corrupt humans that mixed words, that put all sorts of interesting thoughts into how this goes. This goes in the decisions that are made as above, so below. As below, so above. What are you going to do this life and next? As we are in the stages of the final. What are you going to choose, right? Are you the truth, the light, the way? Obtaining higher consciousness in a body of form to demonstrate to others? It can be done. And join me this Friday, March 7th at 11 a.m. to learn how, to learn what that's all about. Join also Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at Stars of the Morning Light for Lucky Stone 888 and I with Esoteric Tea. It'll be great. It's a wonderful discussion. Also pre-recorded because I will be traveling at the time, but so please be respectful in the chats. Have fun. You can do it, stars. You've done it enough over and over and over again. Let's lay down the extremes, because extremes are still a form of judgment. Be with me Friday to understand what I mean by that. And gain the full conscious awareness that you came to rescue. So where do you fit as a cog in the machine of the 3D density to liberate and enlighten and be the way? I love you all so very much. Cheers. We will do chapter 9 in a couple of weeks. Bye, folks.